The evangelist Luke writes, Jesus passed through towns and villages, teaching as he went and making his way to Jerusalem. Someone asked him, Lord, will only a few people be saved? He answered them, strive to enter through the narrow gate. For many, I tell you, will attempt to enter but will not be strong enough. After the master of the house has arisen and locked the door, then will you stand outside, knocking and saying, Lord, open the door for us. He will say to you in reply, I do not know where you are from. And you will say, we ate and drank in your company, and you taught in our streets. Then he will say to you, I do not know where you are from. Depart from me, all you evildoers. And there will be wailing and grinding of teeth when you see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, and you yourselves cast out. And people will come from the east and the west, and from the north and the south, and will recline at table in the kingdom of God. For behold, some are last who will be first, and some are first who will be last. This is the truth. Peace be with you. I remember when I was a child hearing about my parents. They went on some kind of trip where they went cave exploring, spelunking, or they went mountain climbing, something like this. And I remember them telling me, they said, oh, we went through this one part and it was called the Fat Man Squeeze. The Fat Man Squeeze. It was a part of the cave or the part of a valley that was very narrow, so that an above average sized man could not fit through the passageway. That's what the name implied. But I just remember having this image of like a sumo wrestler or something, ready to squeeze you, a fat man squeeze. Now Jesus, he talks about a narrow gate. A narrow gate. And that this narrow gate was designed so that armies couldn't enter, was designed so that only one person at a time, so that only a select few would enter, as opposed to a wide and broad path that many could enter. I remember hearing about the churches that I would see in Lebanon and in Cyprus that would be designed with very low doors. The doors would be low and the doors would be narrow, and you would have to go downstairs and then you'd have to come back upstairs to get into the church. And they said the reason that they designed the churches in this way was so that no army could ride a horse into the church through this down narrow passageway and back up. So that if they were attacked, they would have some chance. That if they were attacked, they would have some protection, some escape. I also hear about in a sheepfold, you would find a cave that had a narrow entrance, and so that the sheep could come in, and then the shepherd, who was also the gate, would lie in the passageway so that no sheep could get out without crossing over him. That in this way of this narrow gate, this was a sign of protection. This was a sign of safety. This was a sign of peace. Now, if you were to have a very broad gate, a very wide gate, this would be glorious. This would be pretty. This would be very fancy. But in the day of war, your city could be taken. In the day of war, your path was easy for your enemy. They talk about in Rome, all roads lead to Rome. And what the problem was that invading armies could take a smooth, safe path all the way to the heart of Rome. A wide path, a path good for military adventures. And so when we hear about this narrow road, we hear about as something that limits us, something that puts restraints on us. But we also see that it is something that frees us. It is something that gives us life. We could see a similar policy, if we want to imagine, in our current situation, by saying only one person can come into the grocery store at a time, by saying only so many people can be in a building at once. It is like this idea of a narrow gate in terms of protection, in terms of safety. But there is another side to this narrow gate, that we must struggle. I'm sure all of you have heard of Black Friday, where a big company like Walmart or Best Buy will have 3 TVs on a very good deal. But they say, if you want these 3 TVs, you have to give up your feasts of Thanksgiving. You have to give up your sleep. You have to give up your comfort. You have to stand in line so that you are one of the first 3 people so that you can get a deal on a TV. This is a narrow gate. And so for heaven, Jesus, he says, strive to pass through the narrow gate. Strive. And so how do we do this? We set aside our feasting. We set aside our banquets. We stay up late into the night in prayer, learning about the Lord so that when he comes, he will say, yes, I know you. You are my friend who comes and prays every day. You are my friend who has never missed speaking to me. You are the one who has relied on my love and my mercy. We will see that we have given up our comfort, given up our profit in this world because we have stored up treasure in heaven. If we have treasure here, it ties us down. If our hope is here, it ties us down. If our goals are in this life, it ties us down. And no matter how broad this gate were, we would not enter because we would not want to enter. Jesus says to me, come to me, all who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. If rather than being wearied and heavy burdened by the world, if we are rather excited by the world, obsessed with the things of this world, full of this world, putting our treasures in this world, relying on this world, having our pride in this world, then we will say, the things of this world do not weary me. They are not a heavy burden. I have money. I have wealth. I have power. I have prestige. I have comfort in this life. I do not need your yoke. If we do not have the eyes of faith to see that the cross is better than this life, then we cannot come into the resurrection and into the new life. I wanted also to comment on this icon here. We have Jesus, and we have Mary, and we have Joseph. Jesus was crucified on Golgotha, the place of the skull. And some people would say because the mountain looked like a skull, it was called the place of the skull. But others would say this was the very place where Adam died. Adam, the first man. It was the place of his skull. And we see Jesus clothed in red. We know that he was stripped on the cross. The scriptures tell us. But here, he is clothed in red because he is the priest, because he is the king, because he is the victor. And so we clothe him in red because he is the one offering himself in sacrifice. Let us never cease to go to Christ. Let us never think that we can live without Christ. Rather, let us cast all our cares upon him. Let us seek out his hope. Let us seek out his love. Let us seek out his joy. That in him and in embracing his cross and his yoke, we may find the joy and love and peace of the resurrection.